All right, so I think in the previous video I asked, like, would it be beneficial to have like a search bar where we can filter down even more of these builds based on a title or an author or a description or something, some type of keyword. And I think that would be kind of useful for some instances maybe. So let's try to add that in. I think this will be a short video today, but let's just go ahead and go to this page, which I think is like, if I go to the matchups here, we can find that page. And on this page, we want to add some type of search bar. Okay, so let's do that above the build type maybe. And where should we do that? Let's just do it here. I'll add a field set here. And I probably should wrap this whole thing in a form, honestly, because this is like, this has inputs and stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a form here. Might not be too necessary, but I think it's more proper to do that. Now we have a form that's wrapping this area. And what we're going to do is we are going to add another label. So let's just go ahead and copy this. And we are going to go ahead and put an input here. And let's make sure we use the same styles from another page. So let's just go to like the submit build page. And I want to find an input. We're going to go ahead and copy this. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and copy that input. And before I get into this routine of just copying and pasting code all throughout my code base, I think we've reached a point where we need to abstract away maybe the label and maybe also the input. Okay, because I don't want to copy and paste these tailwind classes all throughout my code base. So I'm going to go ahead and make a component here called label that takes in a text. This, I'll say this could be text of string. And I'm going to copy and paste that label in. Okay, and I want to make sure that the text is interpolated out there to the screen so that we can view the text. And now I'm going to use this label here, like this. And we could say text is build type. Now we could also use children as well. It's really a personal preference, I think. I think using props gives you more flexibility because you can really only have like one child. I like using just the props being text, but you could potentially use children as well if you wanted to. Like if you wanted to have a label and this is the interface that you use with the label. Like potentially if you wanted to do this, maybe that'll be a better approach because now you can actually put like icons in here. You could actually put like other things in here. Maybe that is a better approach. I don't really know. Sometimes you got to play around with the code and figure out what is the better approach. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pass children in. And if you guys can leave a comment as well to figure out like what is the better approach. So for children, I think this needs to be like a React node maybe. Does it need to be a React node? Let's see if that'll complain if I do React node. So now we can actually put like other things in here. I could put potentially like an icon or something. So I'll do that approach. But then also we probably want to abstract away the input to a reusable component so that this tailwind styles are not copied and pasted all throughout my code base. I'll do that. Go ahead and paste in the input. Now for this one, we probably need to pass down some props. So I will do props. And we are actually just going to go ahead and allow you to overwrite certain things. So I'll say value and then on change. Let's just do that. Value can be string, on change will be a function that takes in a, what is this thing? This is an HTML element, React change event, React.change event, input. Which one do I need? HTML input element. So HTML input element. And that's going to basically do nothing. So I'm basically doing like a really simple wrapping of what an input would be in my application. And this is also good because what we're doing is we are isolating our application from whatever the implementation details is for an input. So for example, let's say in a year from now, we don't want Tailwind CSS and I want to use like Material UI. Well, because we're using this input here, if I just actually use that and import it, I'll show you. Because we're using this input, our UI is kind of abstracted away from like the underlying details of how the input needs to work. So inside of here, this could be styled with Tailwind. This could be styled with style components. We could be using inline styles. We could just be using CSS. We could be using Material UI's input components. our UI doesn't know about it. All it knows is that, okay, I got an input and I need to basically do this. And then we should probably also pass in ID, which I believe was author or something. Let's go back here to the input and I'll add auth or ID like this. And I'll say ID is also string. And then that needs to be interpolated in. This could be value. All right, does that look good? So now we have abstracted away label and input, and now find name author. Why is that not working? Not find name set author. Did I delete some stuff? Why is this stuff not being found now? Oh, obviously these things aren't going to work because I didn't even like set up the state for keeping track of it. So again, we're trying to add a feature where we can add like an input box where someone can type in. So I'll just say search and set search up here, and we're going to go ahead and just say use state like that. And we'll default it to an empty string for right now. And instead of saying author and set author, I'll just go ahead and say search and set search. So hopefully this works. Actually, I'm going to get rid of the name of author here and just say search. And then the label, we should probably give it an HTML4 here, and I'll say search. And let's go into here and I'll say, I don't know, HTML4. And then we could also say HTML4 is a string. Now, if you wanted to, you could potentially say like ... rest, and then I could simply just apply those, and then I don't have to like worry about setting up all of these by hand. Right now though, I'm just going to keep it really basic and say HTML4 and just keep that interface more explicit. Okay, so let's make sure this works. So I should be able to click on the label and it should highlight the input. I don't think it's doing that. So let's figure out why that's not doing that. So on the label itself, we need to add HTML4 like this. I forgot to do that. And I think now if I click on the label, it should select this. Okay, so now what we need to do as well is that you'll notice that the label and the button, or the space between this label and this thing, are very, very close together. And it'd be cool if we had some default gap that could be used. So what we could do again, and let me know if you feel like I'm just over abstracting some stuff. I could add a form component here. We could just basically give this a form with some children. And I'm going to keep this one really, really like, I'll just say props, and we're going to apply the props to the form. And the main thing that we want to do is we're going to give it a class name here that is going to give it a display of flex. Let's say flex column, and gap of 4. Let's go ahead and say children. Actually, let me make sure I say children, and then I'll say rest here. Like that. Okay. So now we have an abstract form, and this is complaining because I probably need to say children is a React node. And then I believe I need to import that. Okay. And then also what we need to do is, do we need the type rest? I guess we don't. So I think we're fine. So now let's change this to a form. Like so. And now we should have some default gap that's put between these two field sets. Let's go back to our page and notice that there's a gap here now. Now, anywhere in my application I decide to use a form, they're all going to have a consistent look and feel because the gap is coded in one place instead of it being different on every single page. So I think this looks a little bit better. So all that was just refactoring. We didn't actually add really the new feature that we're talking about. But now I want to actually allow the user to type in filter by filter. I'm going to say by name, author, or description. How about that? So now I want the user to be able to type in here, and it's going to filter out the result set even further to only show the things that match the filter. So remember, we did the filtering here, filter builds. And we're filtering by build type to start with, but we can also tack on another filter. And I like having separate filters because it keeps the code a little bit cleaner to read. So I'm going to add another filter, and we want to filter by the search. So again, I'll say build, and then I'm going to say if search is not equal to empty string, then we're going to say build author dot why is build author not coming back? Hold on. Let me just do this real quick. I think I have a syntax error because I have an extra equal signs here. So if the search is not equal to an empty string, so there's someone actually typed into the input, I want to check if build.author.includes, you can also say, I think index of, or contains, I believe. I don't remember what it needs to be for a string. So in fact, I'm going to go to JavaScript string. Is it contains, or is it includes, or is it index of? I always forget. It looks like it's includes. So let's just go ahead and say if the author includes your search string, or I'll put this on a new line so you can actually see it. Or if the build.title includes the search string, or if the build.description.includes the search string. So if any of those things match, then we can return that in the results. Now, I think description was potentially allowed to be undefined, which I should probably default it to an empty string maybe. So I do have to fall back. This seems a little bit hacky, but it's necessary to make TypeScript happy and not potentially have the application crash when someone uploads a build that has no description. Okay. So let's go ahead and see and make sure this works. So let's go back to our UI. And then right now, nothing is displaying. So I do think we did break something. And let's try to figure out what we broke. Because I think filter should be nothing at this point. So if I go to components and look at the root, I don't know which I need to look at. I think it's one of these things. Just click here and figure it out. So as I type in here, notice that the state does update. So the search is working fine. But the filtering is probably broken in some way. So if the search is not equal to an empty string, then we want to return. Now, I think sometimes it helps to add like giant parentheses around all these things, but in this case, I don't think it makes a difference. If the author includes a search, or if the title includes a search, or if the description includes a search, I think this just needs to be true here. Okay, so the way filter works, if you return true, then everything is going to be sent back. So if it's an array of 100 things, the results that get filtered down will be absolutely nothing, and you'll get back an array of 100 things. Otherwise, we actually need to do some real logic to make sure that we get back the results. Let's make sure this works now. So I should be able to type in created by AS. If I type in AS, that should stay here. If I type in like pig, that should go away. Now let's see if we can find things that have more. I might need to create some more builds. So let's go to create build, DVT, cheese, the author is pig, title is the best drone rush in the world. Use drones to kill your Terran foe. No build order. Click submit. Go back to find a build. Let's go to Terran here. And I believe that was a cheese, so we should have 2 now. And what I wanted to be able to do is I should be able to type in the title. Let's test. If I can type in best, we should only get 1 result. World gets 1. And now if I type in drones, we get back anything that has the word drone in it. Terran foe. I type in testing. Notice there is an issue with the case sensitivity, right? This thing has testing here, but I have to make sure I type in capital testing for it to show up. So we should probably fix that as well, where we're going to go ahead and cast this stuff to lowercase, and also the search could be cast to lowercase. So I'm going to put a concept here and say lowercase search is equal to search dot to lowercase, like this. And then I want to make sure I use that everywhere. And then also here, I'm going to say to lowercase on the actual things that we're searching over, like author, title, and description could also be lowercase so that we can actually get the result back. And we could probably figure out a cute, smart way to make this more generic so that we could like just have a key of author, title, and description, and we could have like a map. Sometimes it's better just not to over-engineer your code. Like this is pretty straightforward to read, right? It's a little bit duplicative and it's verbose, but it gets the job done. And we can come back and maybe try to change that up a little bit. Let's go back to cheese. I should be able to type testing and it should show up. test, build. Okay, so now we have a way to like filter down these builds based on any of those things. So if I type in pig, we get the author back. Now I will say the form, I do like more spacing, so I'm gonna go back to that form component we added. I'm gonna make that a gap of 8, just so it looks a little bit nicer. Now I talked about potentially restructuring. Now I talked a little bit about refactoring this code because it is potentially kind of sloppy. So what I'm going to try to do is instead, this will take in some keys like author, title, and description. And let's figure out a smarter way to basically check to make sure if any of these things include the search string, then we'll return something. So there's a nice helper utility. I think you could say .sum. And then I'm going to say key like this. And then I will check if build of key defaulted to an empty string. And then I'm going to lowercase it to lowercase. And then I'm going to say includes lowercase search. And go ahead and try this out. Now it is going to complain because build string cannot be used to index build order. So I get this all the time in JavaScript. I mean in TypeScript, and I sometimes forget like how do I fix this? Honestly, I don't remember. It doesn't like that I'm using key to dynamically get this stuff. So I don't know if maybe I need to cast this thing to an actual like as record. Let me try this real quick. I don't know if this will work. I'll say as a record, this will be a string any. I'll do string. All right. Does that fix the issue? Okay, that won't work either. So I'm gonna cut this out. If anyone who knows TypeScript can just point me to like what is a real solution for this, because I've run into this so many different times. I guess I can Google it, right? That seems like it kind of fixes it, maybe. I think I'm missing a parenthesis as well. So that could have added on to my confusion of red squiggles. If I get rid of this, what happens? Element implicitly has any type because expression type string. I could also say as any, honestly, if I just want to be lazy. And I think that'll work, but we'll probably have a lint error. So I think the proper way, or a potential proper way, would be something like this. I don't know. You guys let me know. But now it's not complaining at me anymore. And I can type in whatever I want. I can type in the author, drone, pig. There we go. So this filter being huge, I don't know if it needs to be full screen, honestly. Like these are pretty big. We could probably limit this to be like half the page or something. So if I go to the form itself, which I believe is here, we might want to limit how the width of this. So we might have to like extend the form a little bit to accept classes, because I don't know if right now it does. Yeah, right now it has like a hard-coded list of class names. So we could potentially allow the user to pass in a class name like this, and that will say class name. Actually, I'm going to bring in the class names. I'll say import class names from class names, and I'll say class names of this, followed by the class names that were passed in, like that. Now you might say, okay, well, it's probably not a good idea to, I'll make this optional too. Might not be a good idea to like not allow the user to overwrite flex column and gap 8. But again, I want my app to be consistent. And until I reach a reason as to why I don't want to allow them to like overwrite that, then I don't need to add that. So let's just add a width of 1/3. And let's see if that kind of reduces the size of this filter. And it did, so it looks pretty good. Maybe, does that look good to you all? Maybe I can put them on one line as well. So like I could potentially say like this is a grid call 3. And now I'm starting to realize maybe there are some use cases to like overriding the classes. I think this looks a little bit better. Maybe I'll make it a grid column of 2. We could also try putting the filter up here or something. I don't know. Maybe I'll just go back to what I had before because I think it looked okay. And then obviously it's good to like scale your app down and make sure this thing doesn't look terrible, in which in this case it does look pretty bad. But I'm not trying to code for mobile at this point. I'm just trying to make something work. Also, maybe having some type of title there could be useful. So let's find out where the results are displayed. And I'm going to go ahead and put H2 here. And I will say builds, maybe. So let's just go ahead and copy some of these styles. I might also make abstract components for H1 and H2s because right now it looks pretty bad. I think there's like a gap on the page itself that's causing it to be so much. Like I'm pretty sure I have gap 12 here. Might change this to an 8. And I'm going to make this a 2XL. And I'll say matching builds. And then additionally, I think the reason, I might just wrap this in a section, honestly. There's 2 separate sections here. There is this form, which we can keep as a form, and then I'll say a section here. And then now it's like a little bit closer. I think it makes a little bit more sense. And I can go ahead and give this a class name of flex gap of 4. And flex column. How about that? And then we could probably add more gap between these things, which we could do. Where do we want to do that? You know, I think it's fine. Whatever. I'm not a designer. I'm not going to waste a bunch of time like trying to think of a better way to do something when I don't even know how to design to begin with. Well, yeah, I mean, that's all I really wanted to code up for today. I just wanted to do a little quick video just so I have some content for you all. But if you guys enjoyed watching this, be sure to like, subscribe, press the bell icon, etc. And stay tuned for whenever I add more features to this application in the future. Let's just go ahead and add a commit, and I will say adding a filter to the builds page. All right, later all.